Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the finance meeting to order. Today's June 29th. Do I have a motion to approve of last month's committee meetings? Motion by Mr. Bruno, second by Mr. Looks like Ms. Bramer. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. All right, let's go right into it. Request for transfers of funds as attached for committee approval. I do not see Mr. Moore. Is he on?
Yes.
Okay, so Tammy, what do we got here?
You need to approve the transfer.
So, well, we're going, excuse me. We got three, number one, requests for transfers of funds as attached. Do I have a motion to do that? Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Ms. Kramer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Now the request and items to be discussed by our county administrator who's out on family leave will be Tammy, what do we got here?
This is just your typical monthly journal report of transfers. You all have it in your packet. If you have any questions, happy to address. And if not, happy to move back to my other chair.
Okay. Do we need a motion? Nope.
That's just an
Okay, any questions on that? Seeing none, okay, we'll roll right along. Very good. Number three, requests and items to be discussed by the county treasurer. Mr. Swan, what we got here?
Good morning again. I had a resignation in my office for I got a senior account clerk. This position is in my office for what, if you don't understand, is broken down into basically three sections: property tax section, payroll section, and accounting. This person is in the payroll or in the property tax section, which is where the front counter is, where all the traffic comes in. I need three people out there. With this resignation, I only have two. I'm requesting to fill it.
Okay, do I have a motion to move by Ms. Bramer, second by Mr. McDevitt? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. What do you got next, Mike?
All right, number two is a request to approve refunds and chargebacks. And what we have is a court-ordered assessment change in the town of Queensbury that changes the 2019 and 2020 tax assessment. The county is going to have to issue a refund for 2019 of $147.25, and in 2020 tax, $179.63.
Okay, do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Bruno, second by Mr. McDevitt. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right, item C is needs to be withdrawn.
Okay. We don't need a motion on that. Okay, withdrawn. Thank you, Mike. Now, were you going to stick around and there's a couple of things. I believe Ms. Hogan had something. Okay, thank you very much. Number four, referral from County Facilities Committee. It's chaired by Mr. McGowan, and obviously Mr. Ajos is here too. Who would like to speak on that?
You're here, or?
Mr. Ajos? Okay, thank you. Yep, what do we got here?
So the first one is a request to transfer funds from the contingent account to cover the cost of asbestos and lead consulting services for the former detention home. As most of you know, we're working with the Historical Society to turn that into the Joseph Warren House. And the first kind of step for them to do any rehab on that house would be to test for lead-based paint and asbestos. But I don't have any money within my budget to do that. We typically the money that's in my budget for that is to cover utility costs and things like that in that building. That's it.
Okay, just to let the committee know, we have currently $232,172.66 in our contingency budget. We also, though, have a pending request for $23,071, leaving us a balance of $209,101.66. That's in our current contingency budget. Mr. Bruno.
I wondered, does the committee know anything about what's going on there? The effort by the Historical Society, et cetera, to convert that, or I don't know what the terminology is, make that into the Joseph Warren Center? Do people understand?
I'm not sure. I know there's a couple of them that are on the committees, and they were also part of the the kind of the subcommittee that we put together to determine what they were going to do. I know Supervisor McDevitt, Supervisor McGowan, and Supervisor Thomas and Supervisor Bruno have all been part of that.
I just
Right.
asked a question that, if people understand it, maybe it makes it a little easier to make the decision.
It's been publicized, so I believe so, Mr. Bruno. I believe so. Ms. Bramer, did you have a comment?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I know that we are going that route, but I'd love to hear an update on where we are because I don't sit on the special committee or working group or whatever we're calling it.
An update, on where we are from a construction standpoint or from?
Yeah, I think it's a great project. I just haven't heard anything. And since we're doing this
All right,
transfer,
Mr. Thomas?
He's the chairman.
I can give you an update. Myself and the county historian, Stan, I can't pronounce his last name. Anyways, is leading up a committee as co-chairs. And we met on June 17th for our first meeting. And during that meeting, we set up two committees. One to develop the museum itself as far as what's in it and the displays and that type of thing, and work with Shane Newell from Massachusetts that's offered some artifacts that he's collected over the years to be displayed. And the second was for the actual rehabilitation or construction of the detention home. Was the detention home. And as Mr. Hayjoe said, the first step is $7,600 to see if we have any hazardous materials that need to be abated or not. So that's where we're at. I think the county, the county is obviously, hopefully will put some money toward this project. And I think also donations, and I think there's other funds that'll help us out. So I think it's a great project. I mean, it is Warren County and it's named after Joseph Warren. I think he doesn't get a lot of recognition, and I think he should. I think he's right up there with George Washington.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. McDevitt,
I
you might
think-
make a comment?
Yes, a quick question or a quick observation. I know Supervisor Thomas, as you asked the question, I was thinking exactly the same thing. We never got to a point where we had a crisply defined number in terms of what the total expenditures may be, but we did ask that information will be forthcoming as we move along. But great people that have a lot of time, and people that are motivated to making this a Class A project. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to need Mr. Bruno, do you want to make another comment?
I just wanted to add to that. This is about a 4-year effort. About a little over a week ago was the 246th anniversary of the death of Joseph Warren. Joseph Warren was a surgeon, I believe. He was a doctor surgeon. He was killed at Bunker Hill. And 4 years from now will be the 250th anniversary of the revolution. And New York State is looking, let me back up. This Warren County exists in multiple states in the United States. Other states have Warren County, but this is the only one that can lay claim to Joseph Warren. He was local, he was killed. Anyway, as Supervisor Thomas stated, he's right up there, I think, with George Washington, et cetera, as a patriot. So 4 years from now will be the 250th anniversary, and New York State is looking to us to do something substantial to celebrate him and the revolution being Warren County. So I just thought that was interesting.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas, another comment?
Yeah, I think the long-term plan is there's going to be, they hope to develop some sort of a learning center, teach leadership training and a learning center along with the actual museum part and the building they have now. I think Joseph Warren was also made a major general just a few days before he was shot or killed at Bunker Hill. He was involved in a lot of things. He's definitely part of the rebellion and revolution. He was leader of it.
Ms. Bramer, you have a comment?
I do. I think that we have a lot of great history around the Revolutionary War that we do not do enough to promote and to get out to the public and have these spaces where people can come and learn about it. So I think it's a great project, and also learning that the state is looking towards us. Hopefully we'll get some state partnership funds to help with the renovation and setup of the museum.
Thank you.
So let's not lose sight of that, because a 4-year process makes me think that's a lot of money that's going to go into this whole thing. And we shouldn't have to bear all the burden of that, although I'm happy to contribute.
Right.
So I'll make if he made that motion, I'll second.
Okay, I was going to ask, do we have a motion? You're making the motion. Do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Bruno with the second. Any more further discussion on this? Okay, it seems to me to be a no-brainer, so I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We're on 4B, I believe.
Yeah, 4B is a request to authorize the appropriation of funds from the Reserve Rehab County Buildings Code. This is for the generator swap out. We put the money in that reserve, I believe in 2020, which was about $118,000. The generator and transfer switch cost about 96, and this would cover the cost of getting the final hookup for the generator for the HSV building.
Okay, do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. McDevitt. Discussion? Yes, Mr. Thomas.
I believe this will make our building operational should we lose power.
This will make that entire building operational if we lose power, so no one will be sitting at their desk twiddling their thumbs.
We'll have no pulling of thumbs. Sounds like a winner to me. Any further discussion? Mr. McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, so the other generator is going up to Countryside, or is it already up there?
It's not up there yet. It will be going up to Countryside. And that's on the list of some of the projects that they have going on. And there's also money in one of their reserve accounts. I believe it was about 38,000 to cover the cost of that up there. They need a transformer because right now they're currently 208 and I believe it was 240 volt down here. So they need a transformer to knock that down, as well as the transfer switch for this type of generator.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hajos. Another outstanding job. Number 5, referral from the Criminal Justice Committee. It's chaired by Mr. Leggett. I see Mr. Leggett's on Zoom. So can he participate?
Yes.
Um,
He's not on your committee, so he doesn't, you don't need him for a vote.
Okay. Mr. Leggett, would you like to comment on your referral from your committee? I see his name on there, but maybe he's not.
Bob's also, I'm sorry, Bob's also on Zoom.
Yes, Bob.
Oh, Mr. Uzi? Okay. I'll refer it to you, Mr. Uzi. Go ahead.
Good morning, thank you. We have, I don't have the finance agenda in front of me, but we do have 3 requests that I can go over quickly. The first one is to apply for 13A classification funding from the Division of Criminal Justice Systems in the amount of $13,140 for a term starting July 1st, 21 and going to June 30th, 22. These are funds that help support our pretrial release program.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. If there's any, I'd be happy to take any questions if there is any regarding that.
Are there any questions on that? Where are we seeing this? It's in the packet, correct?
Yep.
I just say, which one is it?
It's under 5 in your packet.
He's amending the budget, correct?
You're amending the budget.
We're not amending the budget. We have a revenue code for pretrial release. We're just completing the grant to acquire the funding.
Is that something that had to come through finance? Maybe that only went through his oversight committee. Bob, we don't have anything about that, or we only have one item in the agenda from your committee.
Okay. And what is that to amend the county budget?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the only thing we have on the agenda, Mr. Uzi.
Okay, my apologies. And that is to amend the county budget to accept funding from Cornell University in the amount of $35,000 for the Y Reconnect grant. We applied for that grant received that we were accepted in December, and the funding period for that starts April 1st. So we are looking to amend the county budget to accept that money for $35,000. And I will be back on my oversight committee next month to talk about contracts and how we're going to use that money.
Okay, so do I have a motion to bring that to the floor? Mr. Bruno, do I have a second? Mr. Thomas, do I have any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So the other two items that he wants, okay, so you aren't going to handle it. Okay, I think we're all set then, Mr. Lucy.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for participating. Let's go to number 6. Referrals from the Economic Growth and Development Committee. It's chaired by Ms. Hogan. Planning and Development, Wayne Lamont, our county planner. Is Ms. Hogan on there? Yes, Ms. Hogan, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. You want to discuss your items, please?
So I don't have an agenda in front of me. I apologize. Is there something other than what you and I spoke about last night?
Well, let's go through what's on the agenda first, which is a request to authorize the county treasurer to establish countryside renovations in the amount of $300,000 for the purpose of funding repairs and upgrade to county countryside adult home. So do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. McDevitt. So do I have discussion on that? We're on 6A.
Treasurer Swan, do you want to talk about that and the other request that's not on the agenda?
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Swan.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but there, in conjunction with this $300,000 grant, the county has to have $1 million. That's correct, right? We're still talking that figure?
Yes.
All right. I just want to make sure I was clear on that. Basically, the county has to come up with $1 million to get this grant. And I was asked my recommendation. We originally had talked about, we were going to roll several things into one loan, basically a band to borrow for this. I would, at this point, because of the way things are going, I would recommend, and of course it's just a recommendation, the board can do how they please, but I would recommend that we take this $1 million out of our fund balance. We need some more money for the Bolton wall up there, the retaining wall going out to Green Island. So, and that also I think should come out of the fund balance. That's my recommendation. That's where I think the soundest plan for us to follow. But I'm willing to discuss it if anybody has something else they want to talk about.
I'd like to ask Mr. Thomas his thoughts on that. He's our chairman of the budget committee.
Yeah, I think that as far as the countryside situation goes, I think the 300,000 and then plus another million that the county had committed to back in, I believe, February. I think coming out of fund balance is a good way to approach it. I'm not sure that's going to be enough to complete the whole project, but we do have a study that has identified majority of the renovations. And as far as the wall in Bolton there, I'm not sure what the cost of that is.
No, and I'm kind of holding off on that too until we find out where we actually are on that. But yes, and I understand from everything I've been told that it'd be 1.3 million is not enough to complete everything at Countryside. But at this point, we need to set aside that $1 million in order to receive the 300,000. So that's where I would like to have it come from.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Okay, it seems like the treasurer is comfortable. It seems like the budget chairman is comfortable. Do I have any other discussion? Mr. Bruno?
So just for my clear understanding, so there's a $300,000 grant pending, or is that what this first item, A, to establish CD 76, renovation in the amount of $300,000, is that
That's
anything about a grant here is my point.
Go ahead, Mr.
That's
Swan.
establishing we have to establish a revenue code to bring that 300,000 in. I don't know exactly, and I don't want to misspeak. Maybe Supervisor Hogan can answer this better than I, but it's my understanding that we have made the application and have received the go-ahead that we will be receiving that $300,000 pending setting aside $1 million as our match, basically.
Thank you. Mr. Swan, can we put that $1 million in a escrow account? I mean, we have to put it aside for the state, so we receive the $300,000 grant. Do we put that $1 million aside, which we take out of the general fund, into an escrow account?
It is, well, no, the money, I mean, we aren't actually going to move any money until there's an expense coming in. Okay. But as long as we have it reserved by resolution, then that money is out there and waiting. But it's like all the other money that we have that's in a pool. Okay. We don't exactly create another bank account just for that specific dollar amount.
Gotcha. Okay.
Very good.
Any other discussion? Yes, Ms. Hogan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to go back on, we are getting a lot of estimates in that are coming in higher, but as everybody knows, construction costs are at an all-time high right now. So looking at the potential of doing this work next year, what I'm being told is that the construction costs are already starting to come down. So we're sort of setting up to prepare for the worst case scenario on this. Hopefully, we won't need all of this money in the long run, but we will be coming back with more discussion about perhaps allocating a further 400,000 or so to meet the current estimates out of stimulus funds. And these would be eligible for use because we're looking at the ventilation in Countryside. So, it's kind of a function of the moment in time where we're seeing estimates coming back so high. And we need to prove the capacity to meet these estimates, but, hopefully when we're actually doing the work, there'll be some savings just out of the drop in construction materials, we hope. Right?
Okay.
Did I explain that well enough?
I think so. Mr. Bruno has a question.
Yeah, having said what you said, thank you, Supervisor Hogan. What is the schedule for this? Just a rough schedule. I don't need the detail, but
Schedule for, you mean the actual
for the work,
construction and so forth?
right?
I don't have that answer.
I don't, that's Kevin Hajos.
Mr. Hajos, could you help us on this one? The question is, what is the schedule for the construction up at Countryside?
I don't have a schedule for
From what I'm hearing, it's sometime next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, you gotta come up here and just please direct all the questions right to me, please.
Yeah, I do not have a schedule yet. I don't think there's any schedule yet. We're waiting if the grant funding in, then we'll determine what the schedule is. I think Andrea and I, I'll say this, there's some work that the county staff might do, but this work will have to go out to bid. And we've put no bids together whatsoever for this. So I can't give you an estimate in time when this construction is going to
Okay,
take
so
place.
today we're determining the funding, we're determining the project. Ms. Bramer, though, has a question. I can see it on her face.
I had my hand raised up. Thank you, Chairman Beatty. I guess I don't recall the commitment of the $1 million earlier in the year. What are we doing, and what is the overall value to Countryside for these renovations? What exactly are we doing?
Mr. Hajos?
I'll answer part of that question, but I'll let Supervisor Hogan or Thomas jump in as well if they'd like. There was a commitment. This was a planning grant that Wayne Lamothe came up with. The Beardsley, there was an engineering architectural firm that came in 2-3 years ago and did a report on Countryside in its entirety. What are its needs? And there was priorities set, high priority and then low priority, maybe out a couple of years. It went from ventilation system to plumbing to bathroom facilities to outside parking lot areas, things like that. So there was a whole report that was put together probably 2 or 3 years ago. Wayne went after this $300,000 grant through planning, which went through, I believe, and Supervisor Hogan, correct me if I'm wrong, through economic development. But there was a commitment to $1 million because the granting agency said, that's fine. You gave us a Beardsley report that says that the cost to do all this work is, I almost think it was close to $2.6 million. You have to at least commit a certain amount of money for us to give you the $300,000. So I believe that's where the $1 million commitment was from, is we'll give you a $300 grant, but you really have to take on a lot of these projects as part of that report. And that's what was, that was what was submitted as a grant, that we would do all these other projects. Not as Supervisor Hogan said, not quite the entire $2.6 million worth of projects, but a fair amount of the projects that were part of that Beardsley report. And we've since kind of updated some of the estimates that were in that report, because as Supervisor Hogan said, I mean, we just did the one for ventilation with Clark Patterson. That Beardsley report had it in there for $350,000, give or take. We just did the estimate to bring it up to that MERV 13 rating for, catching all the pathogens in the air for that system that they did in malls and so on and so forth. It's over $1 million. It's over $1 million for the cost of that type of system. So
we're doing that system? I mean, who is working on the cost benefit analysis of how old is this building? I'm fine with making upgrades, but $2.6 million of upgrades on a building that's 80 years old? I don't know.
Yeah, please address the chair when
I mean, it's not
questions.
that old, but
Thank you. So, Mr. Hajos, would you like to?
I would say
respond?
probably 40 plus years. Yeah. Right about the 40-year range. Yeah.
Okay, so the building's over 40 years. So do you have a follow-up, Ms. Kramer?
my follow-up question is, maybe Supervisor Hogan has already looked at this as to the, bigger term plan for the building and the overall picture of, is this a worthwhile investment to be putting in $1.3 million or $1.7 million if we have to put in another $400,000 into a building that's 45 years old? Is the planning department already looking at that kind of thing?
Ms. Hogan, would you like to respond?
Sure, I'm happy to respond. I'm not sure, Supervisor Bramer, what the suggestion is. We are housing our seniors in this building. These are the improvements we know that we need to effectuate. And, what's the alternative? Build another one? We're certainly not going to get that done for a couple $1 million. We have this report. It shows where the deficiencies are in the building. And I'm just so pleased that we are committing to at least getting some of this done at this point in time.
Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. As many of you know, in the city of Glens Falls, the Glens Falls Housing Authority is engaged in a multi-million-dollar project to fix up the Cronin High Rise, Richmond Towers, and LaRose Gardens, and Earl Towers over in Hudson Falls. So those four facilities, that's in order to keep competitive with similar types of facilities throughout the region. Even private hotels and motels are always upgrading their amenities in order to be competitive with other places that are doing the same. So in order to keep our numbers consistent and essentially beds full, it's something that I think that we have to do.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. Mr. Thomas, and then Mr. Hajos.
Yeah, I agree with Ben. I think, while the place it's clean and decent, it definitely needs upgrading. It's like it's kind of like a hotel that's been in operation for 40 years. The things need to be fixed. And I think the goal is obviously to get to 48 people in that facility and to take care of our seniors, I think, and to make a better, more comfortable living arrangement. From what I understand, there's no air conditioning in the rooms that these people are sleeping in. So I think that's, I think we need to be competitive, and we need to, if we're going to have it, we need to take care of it and make it work to the best of its ability.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Hajos, then Ms. Bramer.
I was just going to add on to what Supervisor Hogan and Supervisor Thomas said. The Beardsley report, I mean, these are deficiencies. These aren't just, wants or something. It's deficient. They're dated. I mean, if you think of a 40-year-old heating ventilation system in a building, that's fairly old. And it's time to upgrade it. So, I mean, the roof on that building is 40 years old and that was the number one priority in that report was to get that roof done. So that's a $375,000 cost.
Okay, Ms. Bramer?
Thank you. I wanted to respond because I don't want there to be any suggestion that I'm thinking that seniors should not be housed properly. I certainly think we should be taking care of our seniors. And when I came on this board, just before I did, we sold the nursing home, which I was adamantly opposed to, but was not yet a voting member of this board. So I'm not suggesting that we don't invest in the housing for our seniors. But I do know with the Glens Falls Housing Authority, they just tore down all of the apartments at LaRose Street Commons because they were old and they needed to be updated. That's what I'm suggesting. Do we need to build something new? Is this insufficient? Do we have a better way of housing 48 seniors?
All fair questions. Are there any comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Hogan, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we could certainly look at a new facility. That would be really fantastic. But as Superintendent Hajo said, these are actual deficiencies. You know, as you know, a project of that size is several years down the road. And these are actual deficiencies that need to be rectified now. And while 300,000 offset to $1 million commitment from this county, you know, of course, we'd love to see it tipped the other way and be getting $1 million for our 300,000 commitment. Unfortunately, that's just not the way it's going to work out right now. And we need to make some improvements now. The roof, for one thing, is something you can't punt while you try to figure out something greater. The ventilation inside the building, another thing, we can't put that off. We've got to get these dealt with. We own a facility. We need to do the maintenance on it. And I'd be happy to work with you, Supervisor Bramer, on a proposal for a new facility at some point in the future.
Okay, one final comment.
One
Ms. Bramer,
final
because I'm
comment.
not
I
gonna-
think that's great.
This isn't going to go into tomorrow.
And I'd be
so-
happy to work with you too, Supervisor Hogan. And it just seems to me like from what you're saying, we need to do these now and but it also seems like we haven't been doing them. So that is concerning to me. So just like with the retaining wall up in Bolton, we said, boom, we're going to fix that $1 million+ Let's do it. So I guess we need to move forward with $1 million now.
Okay. You're the last comment, Mr. McGowan, and then we're going to call the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Supervisor Bramer's comment on the, was it LaRose? Really two different style building constructions. And I do not believe that the LaRose are as old as ours that didn't last as long. But I will make a comment. That was a good observation, but really, that's a good building up there, a solid building that I think is, worth a good investment. I mean, I just want to make that comparison, being in the field that I'm in. So thank you.
LaRose were older than this building.
Really?
Okay.
Were they?
All right, director comments, please, up here. All right, guys and ladies, let's call the question. All in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Are they 50?
Hearing none, motion carried. Let's go to the next one.
I almost remember. Not meat building, but I remember.
Okay, we're going to need a separate motion for the $1 million. That the motion we just approved only had the 300,000, but to set aside the $1 million. So, Mr. Thomas, would you like to make that motion? Okay, seconded by Mr. McDevitt. Here we go again, ladies and gentlemen, discussion. And that will be coming from the reserve, correct?
The general fund.
General fund, yep. Hearing no discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're on 6B. Let's see here, are we gonna? Ms. Hogan, do you want to talk about 6B? It's coming from your committee, or should I just read it and move on? Ms. Hogan, go ahead.
I'm going to need you to read it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. to request for a transfer of funds in the amount of $1,859 from the contingent account to cover the cost of postage for Lake George sewer grant notices to homeowners. Any
Oh, right. We referred this to you guys, as part of the grant for the septic replacement program. We have to notify all eligible homeowners. And so, planning wasn't budgeted to cover the cost of this notification.
Thank you for the clarity. Okay, do I have a motion to bring this to the floor? Motion by Ms. Bramer, second by Mr. Bruno. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I'll read the next one to you, Ms. Hogan. It's
Thank
6C.
you.
You're testing my reading skills. 6C, request to authorize the appropriation of funds in the amount of $35,000 from the general fund unappropriated surplus to budget code A-8021470, planning contracts to cover the county share of the Warren County Recreation Economic Strategic plan included in the consolidated funding application contingent upon the approval of the grant application. Note, this request was not reviewed by the Economic Growth Committee. So I guess you didn't even discuss this in your committee?
We did, in that we reviewed what some of the CFA applications are going to be. These are the grant applications that are due at the end of July. And actually, Supervisor Leggett, if you're still here, you might be able to talk a little bit more about the scope of this, this grant application.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to right now at this point. Thank you, Supervisor.
Sure. So it's an application we're putting in to create a plan for recreational facilities throughout the county. And the 35 would be the local match, basically.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. I think we got a little more depth from Tammy. Do you want to add something?
Sure. So this project, the cost of the project is $100,000. There's a 50% local match. And speaking with the planning department, the plan is 15% of that, or $15,000 would be covered with personnel costs. So that would leave the $35,000 left of the county's share of the local match.
So 35,000 left of the county share for the local match. Ms. Bramer, did you have a comment?
Tammy, do you, or Chairman, I'm curious as to what the recreation projects are.
Supervisor Leggett's, he worked with Wayne to conceptualize this, and he's ready to address it now.
Oh, okay, Mr. Leggett. Thank you, Tammy. That was very nice. Mr. Leggett, go ahead.
And sorry, my camera's not working today. And Mr. Chairman, you'd appreciate this, because in order for the Board of Supervisors to make good strategic decisions, we need to have a common goal ahead of us. And I had begun talking with Wayne about a comprehensive master plan for the county. Most towns have one, and that helps guide our development decisions on things. So Wayne said, what if we start with a recreation strategy? And I think that's a real good place to start, because as you know from our websites, all that Sarah has done, that there's a lot of information out there, background that can be used to pull together strategy fairly simply. And a recreational strategy will be cross-cutting. It will take care of economic development. It'll take care of our tourism. It will unify plans across towns. Like, for example, between Horickenchester and Johnsburg, we have discussed the issues of how we can be connected more on a year-round basis between mountains, lakes, and rivers. So we have a lot invested already through the county. First Wilderness Heritage Corridor, for example. How do we now leverage this and start getting returns on it? And that's what this grant funding will help us do.
Okay, do I have any other discussions? Ms. Bramer.
I'm curious as to what, if anything, will be included for Glens Falls. Does anybody have any information on that?
Mr. Leggett or Ms. Hogan? I see her hand up. Go ahead.
It is a countywide plan. That includes Glens Falls, as always.
Thank you. Okay, is there any further discussion on this? Otherwise, I will call the question. Oh, we don't have a motion. First, a motion by Mr. Thomas. I need a second. Second by Mr. McDevitt. Now we have the motion and the second. So now we can call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Hogan, Mr. Leggett, and Tammy. Thank you very much. We are now on number 7. It's a referral from the Health Special Committee. It's chaired by Ms. Frazier, and Ms. Jones is our director. I don't see Ms. Frazier on, but I do see Ms. Jones on. Janelle, are you on there?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I am. And I have Tom Driscoll, our fiscal expert, with us. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Okay, thank you.
This is just a budget amendment. We're getting an additional $50,000 for our, what we call our ComCare or contact tracers. And basically, I'm putting most of it into part-time and overtime salaries and fringe related, and a little bit into phone expense because they do need phones if they have to go somewhere with a GPS, try to get where they need to go or call. So it's broken out between salaries, fringe, and phone expense, a total of $50,000.
Okay, do I have a motion to bring this to the floor? Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Mr. Thomas. Okay, do we have any discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's carried. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
That was short and sweet. Thank you. Okay, we are now on item 8. This is a referral from the Public Works Committee. It's chaired by Mr. Conover. Mr. Conover is not here today. This is the Parks, Recreation, and Railroad. Mr. Benway is our director of that. Is he on? He's not on. Okay. Mr. Hajos, you're sneaking in that corner, and I forget you're there. Go ahead, Mr. Hajos. What do we got?
Sure. The first one is request to amend the county budget in the amount of $3,600 to reflect a receipt of a donation from the Lewis Trust. They give us this donation every year.
Okay, do I have a motion to bring it to the floor? Motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Ms. Bramer. Any discussion? Okay, seeing now, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 8B.
The next is to request to authorize the appropriation of funds from budget code A899 Reserve County Railroad Repair. This is for the pump repair that we had to do at the Thurman Station. And as again, you all are aware, we don't budget a lot for the railroad because we weren't doing a lot of the maintenance on it. But we do have the money in the reserve to cover the cost of the pump.
Okay, do I have a motion to bring this to the floor? Mr. McDevitt, second by Mr. Thomas. Discussion. Yes, Ms. Bramer.
I know this came, not the specific issue, but the STB getting delayed further in the discussion about whether or not there will be a sale of the railroad assets north of us to an actual railroad operator. I just want finance to be aware that that's out there, because I think that if a buyer ever came up, they would try to contact us and we would have to negotiate, I think, about how much money we would be willing to invest in bringing the railroad back up to freight standards.
You're just making us aware of the possibility that that scenario could occur, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. So any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, that was 8B. We're now on 8C. Go ahead, Mr. Hajos.
Thank you. The next is to request an increase to capital project H390. This is the county bridge and culvert projects that we have every year. We budget the money and we put it into transfers to capital projects, and then we move it over sometime during the year when we start to do the work on the bridge projects. So this is the transfer the money over or to increase that capital project.
Okay, do I have a motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Bruno? Discussion. Hearing none, seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're on 8D, as in Doug.
And the last one we have is to increase capital project H396, which is the East River Drive, County Route 16 and Call Street, County Route 32 rehab project in the amount of $2,572, which would reflect what we were receiving in the TIP project or the federal project for through DOT and Federal Highway.
Okay, do I have a motion by Mr. Bruno, second by Ms. Kramer? Discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ajos. Another outstanding job. Thank you. So you're not sneaking away. All right, we're on number 9 now. Yes, Amanda?
I just wanted to point out, number 9 includes number 8, which was from the county treasurer to reintroduce removing from payroll. And that one does not require any action. The personnel committee is going to have the negotiating team, excuse me, ask the CSEA about taking those out. So no action on that item yet. So you're just looking at 4C, 5A through B, 6A through C. These were all approved by personnel, and you can choose to review and approve them individually or all in one motion, whichever the committee prefers.
Do I have anybody who would like to entertain these all in one motion or individually? Mr. Bruno, would you like to make the motion that we entertain them together? All right, second by Mr. McDevitt. Okay, discussion on 9 or 4C, 5A, B, and 6A, B, and C. Okay, seeing and hearing now, I call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No opposed. Okay. We are now on, was that removed? Was 8 removed?
Yes,
Okay,
8 was removed.
8 was removed. Okay, so now we have pending items. We're on the pending items of the agenda. The committee requested Mr. Tillinger to obtain an estimate pertaining to the cost for outside counsel to assist with looking into whether it was worthwhile for the county to move forward with legal action to recoup the money that was spent on a tax map parcel number 133-.8-1-27. That's the Mosier Garage up in Johnsburg for cleanup efforts and litigation and report back to the committee. What do you got, Mr. Tillinger?
Two things on it. I have reached out to some law firms in the area. I haven't heard back from any of them yet on this, unfortunately. The second thing is pursuing litigation of this type, you have to look at, I call it the backside of it is, what are you going to get if you get a money judgment? Is it going to be worthwhile? So in this case, if there was a lawsuit against that property, the owners of it, what are you going to get? What do the owners have of it? In this case, it's to see, do they have something other than the property, or is this the only property? In this case, the owner is actually deceased. So it would be, is there any estate of that person? Is there any property in that estate that would be there to pay for a money judgment if you get a money judgment in your favor? And if there isn't, if the only property is this particular garage, the location this shop and building is on, what's that property worth? And is it worthwhile to then engage in litigation? Or are you going to get a judgment that's barely worth the paper it's printed on? The property does owe substantial back taxes. And that is another way for us to go and actually take that property title to it by foreclosing on it in tax foreclosure as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Swan, did you have a comment? Sure.
I'm very familiar with this property. I've been dealing with it since 1990. The woman who owned the property passed away. Everything before she passed away was moved off to her family, signed off. There is no money. There is nothing. There is not even an estate has been opened in this case. So as much as it pains me to say, we could spend an awful lot of money to get a worthless piece of paper, that a judgment against somebody that is dead and there is no assets. So
Thank you.
I think it would be kind of a waste, but.
Thank you. Mr. McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a simple person, and sometimes I get really confused with you know, and how we proceed on certain things and what we can and what we can't do and what's there and what's not. The way I'm looking at this, the intent was there when the properties were divided up amongst the family members. This property was left to go into foreclosure because they knew that it was contaminated and it was going to cost money. And I think it is very unfair for any town or county taxpayer to have to pick this up. There were assets before the property was given up. This was a planned, and that's the way I'm looking at it. It's not now, is what was the pretense of what went down? Why were all the properties dispersed? What I heard, this family's a major property owner up there. All right, and they've paid tax. So all the properties were divided if it went to one person or two people or whatever. And then, but this one was left to go for the county to pick up and the taxpayers to pay for it. That's where I have a problem. And obviously they can sleep on that, but I have a problem sleeping on that because I have to go to my taxpayers down here that have nothing to do with it up there because these people polluted. And this is what happens, not just in our county, town, but all over the United States. And there's got to be a law that sits there and say, you can't do that, you know, but that's my whole point of trying to pursue and to get this is I'm not looking at it now. I'm looking at it. How did it happen? And do we have legal course on that? Because there was intent here to just walk away from this property. They got their money out of that property. The family was raised on the money that was made in that garage. They polluted that property, and then they walked away from it and gave it over to the taxpayers. Well, someday the taxpayers, and we're cleaning it up and the state's cleaning it up. We don't have as much as the state does in coming in here. So I was hoping maybe we could, you know, the state would do something, but there has to be some kind of law out there that says, you know, you can't do that. And there was previous assets that were divided up that we could have got at the time. And I don't understand why we can't go after those to at least get some help to clean it up from the previous owners. That's my whole thing of what I'm pushing for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. That you make some very interesting points. That's for sure. Mr. Twillinger, I'm going to ask you the question. Is there any recourse which Mr. McGowan is asking for?
Now we're getting into the whole world of having to prove that there was some kind of fraud going on and things like that, and the time frame as to when this occurred. We have a statute of limitations on fraud and when it was discovered. So there's a whole matter with that. One thing that does stand out in my mind is a property that does have back taxes owed on it for a time period. It's not to let it drop from like this end with the county attorney's office, to be vigilant on working with the treasurer and pursuing properties like that that are delinquent in back taxes, and to see whether we want to take possession of it and work out some arrangements like was done with a piece of property up in the town of Chester, I believe, to help clean that up, work out some arrangement with the state to get some funding where the state would work on cleaning it up and the county would pursue the tax foreclosure on it so the county could get the property that way and then see about disposing of it after it's cleaned up, but working in some conjunction where the county is not liable for the environmental pollution on it just because it takes title to the property, but also in a way where the state is coming in to help clean it up and pay for it and work on it in some way, but not to let things fall through the cracks. That's definitely what's standing out in my mind.
Any other comments? Okay, Mr. Thomas and Mr. McGowan.
Yeah, I agree with Brad's sentiments. I think maybe with this particular case, I think the time has gone by. I mean, we've been talking about this since I've been on the board, you know, about the Mosier Garage and Sawmill and other properties. But I think maybe an avenue to pursue would be some legislation with the state legislature to make these properties liable to whoever is deemed to have polluted them forever. I mean, and to go after, you know, to put some teeth into a law that would make these people accountable for until the end of time, you know, until it's settled. But I think that's probably as good an avenue as us trying to chase the Mosers around. I don't think that's.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Terwilliger, we have to be careful on our wording here, all right? This is not fraud. Okay? They didn't do this purposely. You know what I'm saying? They didn't try to. What they did is they did it, realized it, and walked away from it. So it's all in the wording, and this is what I have found out of my few years on being in this life and dealing with attorneys and that. It's all in the wording. But this is, to me, this isn't fraud. You know, it's a type of fraud, but I wouldn't classify it as a fraud. They had a lot of properties. She had a lot of properties in 2 different towns. All right. It was all divided up except for this one piece. Now, is that fraud or is that intent? To me, that's intent. They realized the money that was polluted on this property and they just walked away from it. I don't call that fraud. I call that, well, it costs too much, so we'll just let it go. But thank you. We fed well off of that growing up. It was a good business. So that's the way I would look at it and how I would approach it in the term, but I'm not a lawyer. So I appreciate all you do.
It sounds, you're welcome. It sounds like you're saying it was a business decision on their part because financially that's what you're intending to say. Is that correct or not?
I would, yeah, if you know me with my words, but that's a stronger word. I like that. I mean, like I said, but to call it fraud, it wasn't fraud, we can't prove the fraud, but we could prove that there was other properties and they just walked away from this one. Why?
Thank you. Ms. Bramer, did you have a comment?
I wanted to just mention that I thought that our real property director was working with the state on a similar agreement regarding the cleanup.
I believe that is accurate. So yes, that's correct. I was just told by Mr. Swan and Mr. Twillinger that it is correct.
Still coming from the taxpayers.
Yeah. And
I don't disagree with your sentiment at all.
Okay, I just want to be on the record for that.
yes, Mr. McGowan, and I concur with your,
Thank you, sir.
it's all taxpayer money, whether it comes from the county, the state, the feds. I mean, we all pay for it.
Mhm.
Every one of us in this room. There's nobody in this room that's not. So let's never lose sight of that. And a lot of times we get in the habit of saying, well, the state will pick it up or the feds will pick it up and we only have to pay 10%. Yeah, that's a reality on some things. But the reality of it is the federal and the state is all our tax dollars too. There's no money tree that they pick money from and it's the money tree is actually the taxpayer. Ms. Bramer, do you have a final comment?
I have a question as to whether or not this property is in the foreclosure this year. Are we taking title to it or not?
Mr. Swan is indicating no. Okay. So your question, Ms. Bramer, you got your hands up. I don't know.
I guess we'll refer it back to real property, I guess, or we'll take it up in real property.
I think that would be the correct avenue to do it. Mr. Swan, would you like to make one more comment? Okay, could you, so we can all hear for folks at home?
I mean, nobody else is.
Basically, it's still sitting in that nowhere land because it has not been cleaned up. And until it's cleaned up, the county, and this is, I mean, we've discussed this with multiple county attorneys, we would be held liable for the cleanup if we take title to it. So we have not taken title. We're working on getting a temporary incidence of title, or if we still have it, that's going back and forth on that because we're having the company come in to look at whether or not the asbestos, what the cost of the asbestos and lead paint removal will be before we knock the building down. So that's the status, and it will not be. Well, I shouldn't say will not, but as far as I'm concerned, we will not be taking title to that and selling that until we get the DEC says that it's clean. And they have not stated that yet.
Thank you. That was an excellent discussion on this individual item. Thank you very much. And Mr. McGowan made some phenomenal points as usual. Any other items that the members would like to discuss?
Carry this forward or take it off?
Would you like to carry this forward, this discussion item that we had for next month to continue the discussion, or do you feel we can take it off the pending items now? What's the will of the committee? Mr. Bruno, what would you like?
I think I'd like to leave it on.
Leave it on?
Keep track
Okay.
of it.
Keep me happy.
All right, Ms. Bramer?
I'm fine with that, to keep track of it. I
Keep
think
it on?
it needs to go to real property and have a discussion about what we're doing.
All right, we'll keep it on, Mr. McDevitt. On, Mr. Thomas, on she goes. Okay. Seeing no one in the room, other than this happy band of married men and women, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Mr. Thomas. All in favor? Opposed? Adjourned.